I am pretty convinced that one of the worst feelings in the world is when life seems to be going nowhere, when you feel stuck, like you have no trajectory, no momentum, no progression, and every day essentially just feels like a replay of the day before it. And it's not even that you're moving backwards or that things are getting worse or falling apart. It's just that nothing is happening. And nothing happening is actually a pretty terrible outcome when you're putting a lot in. And I think it's pretty inevitable for most of us that life gets busier, harder, more arduous. It becomes more and more of a grind the longer you go, because we tend to accumulate tasks and responsibilities and goals, and so each day takes more and more out of us the longer we're fighting and the longer we're working. And when we have nothing to show for that for weeks, months, years, decades even sometimes, it is incredibly demoralizing. It kind of feels a little bit to me like when, this is a Midwestern thing, I know, some people have probably never experienced this, but when your car is stuck in the snow, and no matter how hard you press that gas pedal, you can hear the engine going and you can hear the tires spinning, and energy is being expended, gas is being burned, everything's working, but there's no traction. It's not hitting anything. And so despite all this energy and all this power being built up and used, the car doesn't go anywhere. And it's one of the most frustrating feelings, both the actual, like being stuck in life, and the metaphorical car being stuck in the snow. It's just enough to drive you crazy. There's no development, no growth, and it just makes your life feel completely pointless. Stagnation is absolutely terrible for us because we need something positive. We need something to give us motivation. We need a reason to get up and do all this work we're doing every day. Whether that work is your career, working on your health, working on your relationships, there has to be something in it for you. And that's not selfish. That's not ridiculous to want that. That's simply saying, I'm putting things in, I want to get things out. And when I put things in and I don't get things out, I don't really want to continue putting things in. I have hit many stagnant periods in my life, and I've hated every single one of them. I used to think they were very random and unpredictable, both when they started and when I would get out of them. Lately, I found myself thinking that that's not correct. I think I've started to identify some patterns in both the onset and the termination of these periods of stagnation in my life. And today I'm going to share with you my anecdotal, subjective research on my own personal life that has helped me minimize and quickly end these incredibly frustrating periods of life and get back to feeling like it's actually worth living again, and there's actually something happening as a result of my actions and my expenditure of energy. One of the things that I think I figured out, at least anecdotally in my own life this has been true, is that this powerless sensation, this idea that I'm working hard, I'm expending energy, I'm trying to make things better, I'm trying to change, and nothing is happening, think that conceptualization is not quite correct. To say nothing is happening, I don't think is true. And I don't mean, actually your life is getting better and you just don't realize it and things have been great all along. Not that. I mean that your perception that no outcome results from your inputs is not quite correct. I think what actually happens is that we do move, but we don't move consistently in one direction. I think that most of us, especially during these periods of stagnation, are actually involved in an immense internal tug of war between two extremes. So most goals, most values, most things we want in life could be measured on a continuum. So a continuum, if you're not familiar with that term, is basically just a fancy term for like a line or some kind of graph or data point with, a top, a bottom, and a bunch of stuff in the middle. So if you think about the brightness slider on your phone, for example, that's a continuum. It can be on maximum, where it's extremely bright. It can be at minimum, where you basically can't read it. And there's a lot of settings in between, right? So it's not binary. There are many settings along the way. It's not just on or off. Things like predictability versus excitement, for example, could be measured on a continuum. That might be a little oversimplified, but I think in general, when our life moves more towards one of those, it moves maybe away from the other one. I think what happens to a lot of people is they take one action step in some certain direction, and then they have a reactionary step that takes them back in the opposite direction, And the net result is that they end up right where they started. It's not that you aren't moving, it's that you do this. And I believe this comes from our internal drive for homeostasis. What I mean by that is, even though we often want our lives to change because we're bored or unsatisfied or miserable or understimulated or whatever it may be, there is a pretty innate human desire for sameness. We always find change to be a little bit scary and unsettling and potentially undesirable. And that we think that the reason for that is whatever your life is today, whether you love it, hate it, are kind of indifferent to it, you know what to expect for the most part. Everyone's life has unexpected twists and turns, but whatever your life is right now, it has probably been that thing for a while, unless you've had a major change really recently, in which case the title of this video probably wasn't super appealing to you. So when your life has been consistent for a long period of time, you get good at navigating it. You may or may not feel like you're particularly skilled at living your own life, but you've practiced it. Like, if your days are very routine, it's like, okay, this is kind of the same, it's just like yesterday, tomorrow will be the same. It's the reason that gets boring is because you have kind of internalized and automated the decisions and the skills that go into getting through that day. So even if it's something that you really don't enjoy or don't look forward to, there's a feeling of like comfort and safety that goes along with mundane, predictable life. And as survival-oriented mammals, we all value that. We want that predictability on some level because it tells us I'm safe, I'm secure, I'm not facing a bunch of unfamiliar situations that I don't know if I have the tools to navigate. And so even if you don't like it, there's always going to be this drive that you will have to fight against if you want to see real change in your life to just keep everything the same. I mean, this even happens, I'm going to use an extreme example on purpose just to kind of prove my point. This even happens to people in abusive relationships, which are objectively horrible, of course. But if you've been with the same abuser for a long time, you kind of know how they function, and you sort of know how to navigate the dysfunction and the chaos of that relationship. And the idea of not being in it, or being in a relationship with somebody else, even though you might logically know, gosh, I'd be safer and happier to literally just on my own and with probably any other human being other than this person, you can logically know that, but emotionally, as crazy as this might sound, like if you haven't experienced it, it's going to sound crazy, but if you have, you know what I'm talking about. There's a level of comfort in it. Not because you like it, nothing like that, but because you know it. Because there is familiarity. And we equate familiarity and predictability with safety and security. So there's always going to be almost like this magnet inside of you. Anytime you create or try to create real change in your life, that pulls you back to the center, pulls you back to the known, pulls you back to the familiar. So if we go back to this idea of continuums, and let's talk about like predictability versus excitement. Let's say that you identify, let's say you're like me and you have a cyclical mood disorder and you say, I really think my life would go better if I had more predictability and more stability, and it's just kind of waking up and winging it every single day, not working real well for me. Let's try something different. Let's try to have a plan. I'm going to start with meal planning. My nutrition is very erratic in terms of quality, in terms of timing, so I'm going to actually have a plan for the food that I consume during the week, and I think that's going to give me more stability and more consistency in my lifestyle and in my physical and mental health. So you do this, and then there's this nagging little voice in your brain. It's the homeostasis voice that says, oh, it's going to be boring. And you already know what you're going to eat for lunch. That sucks. You're going to hate that. You need to do something a little bit crazy and kind of unpredictable, or, words are failing me right now. Impulsive. That's the word I was looking for. You need to do something impulsive today to offset boringness that's now going to consume your eating habits. So since you're meal planning, now you need to go buy a new jacket, put it on credit card. Otherwise you're going to be boring. You don't want to be boring, do you? And so, like, the contents of your life shift, because both of those things are changes, right? But one moves the needle towards predictability, one moves the needle towards excitement, and the net result is we're the same person. I mean, for the most part, like, a couple little changes happened here and there. where our life is basically in the same place as before either of those things happened on the predictability versus excitement continuum. And so the end result is that even though you made changes and put forth effort, the needle did